Halloween is one of the most exciting nights of the year. People dress up, go to parties, children go trick-or-treating. It's one of the few times where the night is truly enjoyed by everyone. It's ironic that a night devoted to spirits, monsters and terror is the one night where we feel safe in the darkness. Just think about it, we walk through unfamiliar neighborhoods, visits the homes of strangers, and open our doors for people dressed as monsters and serial killers. Would we do that on any other night? Of course not, it would be far too dangerous. Halloween is just a special exception, isn't it? No. The dangers we fear by instinct in the dark are still very much present on this most revered night. It was last year on Halloween. I was giving out candy to trick-or-treaters, as all good neighbors do. They were showing up pretty regularly throughout the early evening. There were young children accompanied by parents, teenagers enjoying their night of independence, and even a few nostalgic adults. You never know who's going to show up at your door on Halloween. Eventually, it got late and things started to die down. I hadn't received a trick-or-treater in about an hour and I was just about to turn my porch light off when there was a knock at the door. It seemed a little late for children to still be out, but I grabbed my bowl of candy anyway. I opened the door, ready to greet the eager trick-or-treaters, when I saw two children wearing the strangest costumes I had seen all night. Their skin was pale ghostly white, in fact. Their eyes were completely black. Not just their pupils or irises, their entire eyes were pitch black. Their teeth were jagged like shark's teeth. They looked more monstrous than any trick-or-treaters I had seen before, but their clothes were plain. They wore ordinary t-shirts and shorts, normal attire. Confused, I asked them, "What are you supposed to be? Some kind of monsters?" "No," the trick-or-treaters responded with discomforting smiles. "We're dressed up as humans." Startled, I slammed the door and locked it. The trick-or-treaters stood outside the door for a few terrible minutes, banging on the door and calling for me to let them in. Their knocking caused the whole house to tremble. I could only watch the door as it shook in its frame. I was sure that it would fall off its hinges at any moment and they would be in, and yet I couldn't find it in myself to do anything. I was paralyzed where I stood and transfixed on the door and the sounds of the trick-or-treaters calling to me. Suddenly, it stopped. There was no pounding on the door, no voices outside, and when I looked out the window, I saw nothing. I'm not sure what stopped them from getting in. Maybe they never wanted to. Maybe by closing the door, I chose trick, but I don't really care. I just know that I never want to see those trick-or-treaters again. I don't know about you, but I'm not opening my door for strangers anymore, not even on Halloween.
Tuesday, October 11th. Today, I drove my 7-year-old son James and I into town to go Halloween shopping. I didn't have to buy any candy this year because we live in a cul-de-sac out in the middle of a farming community on the outskirts of the city. I moved there last year because I had divorced my wife and lost my old house along with most custody of James. It's okay though. James and I love Halloween. It's one of the few times a year that Tracy finds it acceptable for my only son to come visit me. James stays with her on every other holiday throughout the year, his birthday, and everything else in between. I get to see him only on my birthday and the week before Halloween, unless the court finds it suitable for him to come spend the night every once in a while. Frankly, I'm surprised Tracy let him come shopping with me. He showed an extremely strong attraction to a flamboyantly green and purple Buzz Lightyear costume. It's really typical for a kid to have an eye for the most expensive thing on the rack, but I didn't have the heart to say no to those profound blue eyes. He also picked out all the house decorations. I know we won't be getting any trick-or-treaters out where I live, but embellishing the exterior of our home was always one of our favorite things to do together. Friday, October 21st. It looks like James and I will be having some competition for the best Halloween decorations in the neighborhood award, which sadly, in this community, is only fictitious. When I lived with James and my wife, James and I had won the trophy every year since he was 3. Now, my next door neighbor is really giving us a run for our money. He looks like he did quite the splurge on decorations just as we did. He must have ordered everything online though, because aside from the cliché Happy Halloween banners and the like, some of the festive treasures found on his house and lawn were nowhere to be seen in the store that James and I went to, which sold primarily Halloween-related contraband. The thing that stuck out most to me was the kite string strung from both ends of his garage door that suspended dozens of expensive-looking bones and skulls several feet off the ground. He had also placed several other bones sticking upwards, perpendicular with the edge of his lawn. It almost looked rather sinister. There was no color or detail, just random bones placed here and there, strewn about his overgrown and unwatered lawn. I think James and I have him beat though. Saturday, October 22nd. While walking through my house at dusk, I noticed a quick flicker of movement dash in and out of my peripherals outside my dining room window as I was preparing for James's arrival the next day. I can't recall why I chose to inspect what it was seeing, as how I immediately dismissed this movement as a cat or other small animal. I don't even know if I should be glad that I did. I walked back in front of the window about a minute later and saw the same animation, but this time in the center of my vision. I walked back away from the window, and slowly, I peeked out from the corner of the glass. I made out the shape of the very top of a person's head peering over the top of my fence, and seemed to be watching me. Whoever it was, ducked down again right after they realized that we had made eye contact. I backed away from the window. I don't know why. I crawled over to the family room window, which was about 15 to 20 feet to the left of where I was and facing the same direction as the dining room window. I stayed kneeling, timidly but curiously grasping the curtain, and I ever so slowly pulled back the cloth, only to reveal the masked fellow who was snooping around behind my property. This time, I saw the entire head. The mask had a gaping, dangling mouth, similar to the mask used in the Scream series. The only difference was that the jaw of the mask was swaying about in the wind and that it also had teeth. A lot of teeth. Of all different shapes and sizes, surrounding the entire perimeter of the mouth. The expression on the mask was plain, and the tone of color was rather pale, with slight gray discoloration. It didn't have a goofy smile or an intimidating stare, just a mouth hanging wide open and a couple of perfectly round, beady little chameleon eyes. After about 10 seconds of observation, one of the eyes appeared as if it was steadily drifting off, away from where it was fixated, and very slowly, began to scan to the right, and as soon as the eye seemed to lock onto where I was, she quickly disappeared. What a mask. Tuesday, October 25th. I don't really know my neighbor, much less where he gets all of his decorations. I noticed a new ornament of sorts in front of his door today. It was a ceramic bowl full of guts, strategically placed where one would put a bowl of candy if they were too lazy to answer the door for trick or treaters. Behind it was a large white piece of paper bound to the wall of his house with masking tape. On it was written in nearly illegible chicken scratch, "Take one." The whole sign had bloody fingerprints smeared all over it. Even more convincing was the bloody tape, and the bloody wall. Nearly the entire wall was smeared in brownish red. Spooky. The blood streams all over the place were even dried. I didn't know they made novelty blood that looked dried like that. I've only ever talked to this neighbor once, and it was around the time that I moved in. He seemed rather distraught. When I approached him, I asked him if everything was all right. He said that he was late for work, which was odd, because it was around 8:30 at night. I asked him where he worked, and he revealed to me that he was a biologist and worked for the military, and he said nothing more. It was strange, every time I saw him after that, his pants had always ridden up his ankles a little bit more. He was also always stumbling around awkwardly and tripping over his own feet constantly. My other neighbors and I liked to joke about him from time to time. I remember one specific instance when he was watering his shrubbery, and one of his knees gave out. Backwards. Kind of like the way a bird's leg works. It looked excruciating to me, but he just walked it off. I've only ever seen him outside again a couple of times after I saw this happen. We stopped making fun of him after that. And last month, as I walked to the mailbox one afternoon, I had heard his kids crying. Really loudly, and really frantically. Not any screaming to be heard, just horrible crying. The crying stopped later, though, which I was thankful for. I was having trouble sleeping through that horrifying racket. It's been several months since I've seen him last. Wednesday, October 26th. Ever since James arrived earlier this week, he has simply abhorred the idea of removing his costume. Little Buzz has been running ramp throughout the house quoting Toy Story and Buzz Lightyear of Star Command. He hasn't changed once since he put it on, except for the time I demanded that he allow me to wash it because he was rolling around outside in the dirt, so to speak. I haven't seen any more of this weirdo in the mask lately. Probably some mischievous kid from the neighborhood behind mine. It's a cul-de-sac too, just a bigger one. There is a dirt road that accompanies an irrigation canal separating the two cul-de-sacs. My house is the farthest house from the main road, and the canal runs parallel to my fence. There's no bridge that I know of that one could use to cross the water though. Maybe the guy just runs track in school. My neighbor bought a new decoration. Why he's procrastinating so badly I do not know. It's about 200 feet of lights to accompany the 200 feet of intestines he had previously thrown all over the tree in his front yard. The lights don't coexist well with the prior decor, though. All I could smell when I went outside is the burning odor of his literally sizzling ensemble of mix-matched decorations hanging from the tree. When I went outside at night earlier on to go ask him kindly to turn off the lights, most of them appeared to be burnt out, so I went back inside. Come to think of it, the smell wasn't so bad. I'd smelled it plenty of times before, I just don't know where. Friday, October 28th. I'm going insane. No simple words can properly describe what I believe I have witnessed. Today I got another glimpse of the masked person. What I saw this time was not at all what I would describe as a mask. I was sitting in my living room reading. The bay window in my living room overlooks the entire street I live on, and I had my blinds open. I had lifted up my head and looked up and out the window at the nearly dissipated sun because I had heard what sounded to me like an asthmatic individual audibly struggling to inhale, accompanied by a restless house cat. After a bit of listening to this unnerving sound, I stood up from my couch and walked casually toward the window. I cupped my hands above my eyes to deter the sunlight, and pressed my face against the window. And I saw it. It was pursuing a small cat. It ran like an ostrich. Its entire figure was covered in thin hairs and big blue veins, its long, matted, nauseating black hair closely following its flaky, decomposing head. Its flapping, jawless chin bobbing happily to and fro, occasionally slapping the sides of its scrawny, pale, indisposed neck. Narrow shoulders rhythmically bounding up and down in harmony with its tree branch-like arms, easily giving it at least a 5-foot reach. Mammoth hands dragging its chopstick fingers, tickling the ground as it ran. Its emaciated, stilt-like legs completed its horrific image. Altogether I observed an 8.5-foot question mark with greasy hair practically leaping from yard to yard chasing this poor creature for a reason obviously beyond simple sustenance. One could be no less than appreciative that they weren't in the shoes of this poor feline. The cat approached a fence on the left side of the street, followed by its lanky predator. It began to scale the fence. The beast then proceeded to effortlessly jump from the sidewalk, clear the 20-foot lawn, and snatch the animal from the top of the fence with its talon-like claws, as a falcon might. The cat didn't stand a chance, nor did it even manage to voice a squeal. I saw it for a whole 3 seconds before it disappeared into the shadows with its prize. That amount of time was more than enough to tattoo my retinas with its grotesque image. Saturday, October 29th. I now thoroughly believe that the aforementioned beast does in fact exist. I've thought about calling the police, but we all know how that they would never find a monster. That is if they would even respond to such a ridiculous call. I definitely couldn't call in and report a burglar or anything human for that matter, mainly because they wouldn't be looking for what needed to be caught. Earlier tonight, my neighbors threw a street-wide costume party at their place down at the end of the cul-de-sac. I didn't go because I had to work late, and after I picked up James from his friend's house, we anticipated having a game night with the two of us. My reclusive neighbor stayed at bay as well. Sometime during the night, James decided to take a bathroom break. He was gone for over 15 minutes. When he returned, he seemed excited to inform me that he looked out the family room window and saw what he described as a really tall, weird-looking person with a bag running patiently to the house where the party was being held, empty bag in hand. They would disappear into the backyard of the house, and seconds later, bolt out of the lawn with a full bag and tear off towards my neighbor's house, wearing a costume. They repeated this process several times, each time, wearing a different costume than before. He said that on her last round, she stopped in the middle of the street, cocked her head to the right slightly, and her right eye slid to the side of her head and stared right at him as if there weren't a window between them. He said that she then turned her head 180 degrees and locked eye contact with him, and then her colossal mouth sluggishly transformed from a probing expression to the widest smile he thought he'd ever seen. He said that its smile had then hastily collapsed, dropping the chin into a visible freefall which ended with a swinging slap on its chest. It then darted off into a neighbor's yard, and that was when he decided to come alert me of his findings. I looked outside the window, but I could see multiple figures, standing around inside the house of the party. Then I thought of that horrid monster smiling at my beautiful boy. I despised the idea. Next I tried to envision what that particular smile might look like, though I really couldn't. I didn't think a jawless maw that gargantuan had any muscle at all to maneuver that flailing chin in the first place. Lincoln skeleton, so on, so forth. Every one of them was strung up by the back of its neck, feet swinging, head looking down. I really wanted to ask this guy how he comes up with all this. And where he gets it all. And if he knows that last night's rain washed the color off of most of his little knickknacks. I gotta hand it to him, though. The slew of morbid decor in combination with his dirty, rundown, cobweb-covered home gives it a true horror movie feel to it. Later that night I had nearly passed out while finishing up some of my work when my doorbell rang, again, and again, and again, until I reluctantly rose up, walked toward my front door. It was past midnight. I opened the door. It was my neighbor. No, not whatever lived next door, but the fellow who lived behind me, on the other side of the canal. He was disgruntled. He was upset and threatening me about something, but none of it sank in because one of the skeletons hanging from my neighbor's tree was staring right at me, jaw wide open. It was smaller than the other skeletons around it. A gleam of moonlight revealed that a small string tied through a hole bored in the top of its skull was its support. I got goosebumps when I noticed that its eyes were still intact. I then tuned into the man yelling at me. "You listenin' over there?" he asked. "Oh. Yeah. The hell you tryin' to pull? You almost gave my wife a heart attack with that mask dot." So apparently my son and I aren't the only ones who have spotted the neighborhood missing link. How could he possibly confuse that thing with me? And don't try and smooth talk your way out of this one, pal. I saw you jump clear over that fence of yours. The hell you managed to do that? I'm still wonderin', and crawl right back into your basement. I'm terribly sorry. I improvised. I don't know what's come over me. If there's anything I can do. My heart sank. I thought about what he said. I don't have a basement. Wait here, I nearly screamed. I sped off into my house. I bolted down the hall. I began to spasm as I neared the guest room door. My trembling hands applied their convulsing energy to the doorknob, then turned, and flung the door wide open to reveal my son, sleeping, facing the wall, just as I had left him. He normally doesn't sleep with his head all the way under the blankets, but I was too flustered to notice. I jogged reassured back out to my bewildered guest. I didn't know what to think anymore. Sorry. I just dash. He interrupted. Aw, save it. I for one do not care at all about your problems. You just stay the hell away from me and my family. Yeah, here? Yeah. Sure. A calming chuckle dug its way into his angry tone right after I noticed the freshly familiar bottomless blue eyes stuffed inside the head of that skeleton. I gotta hand it to ya though. I nearly died laughing when I saw you running around wearing that little kid's Buzz Lightyear costume.
On the night of July 1st to July 2nd, 1951, Mary Reese burned to death in her apartment, and the nickname, the Cinder Lady, was given to her posthumously by the local media. Reese's remains, which were largely ashes, were found among the remains of a chair in which she had been sitting. Only part of her left foot, which was wearing a slipper, remained. Plastic household objects at a distance from the seat of the fire were softened and had lost their shapes. Reese's skull had survived and was found among the ashes, but was shrunken, sometimes with the added descriptive flourish of to the size of a teacup. Even though the body was almost totally cremated, requiring very high temperatures, the room in which it occurred showed little evidence of the fire. The FBI eventually declared that Reese had been incinerated by the wick effect. A known user of sleeping pills, they hypothesized that she had fallen unconscious while smoking and set fire to her night clothes. Once the body starts to burn, the FBI wrote in its report, there is enough fat and other inflammable substances to permit varying amounts of destruction to take place. Sometimes this destruction by burning will proceed to a degree which results in almost complete combustion of the body.
The Hinterkaifeck murders are one of the most chilling and mysterious crimes in German history. The Gruber family was composed of Andreas, his wife Casilia, their widowed adult daughter Victoria, and her children, little Casilia and Joseph. They also had a maid named Maria Baumgartner in their employ. Poor Maria only worked one day before she was killed. The previous maid had left because she believed the house was haunted. They lived on a little farmstead called Hinterkaifeck, around 40 miles from Munich. Andreas reported some mysterious circumstances to neighbors in late March of 1922. He'd seen a set of footprints leading from the forest toward his farm, but none heading back. Even stranger, he heard footsteps in his attic and found a strange newspaper. A set of house keys went missing. And then, on March 31st, the entire family was murdered in the barn, one by one, with a pickaxe. They were found a few days later. It was determined that whoever had done the killing remained on the farm for a while. The neighbors saw smoke from the chimney, and the animals were fed. While police initially believed the motive was robbery, they dismissed the idea when a large amount of cash was found in the house. To this day, no one knows who murdered the Grubers. The Munich Police Department investigated for decades, but no suspect was never brought to justice. Some believe the killer was Victoria's husband Karl Gabriel, who'd been branded killed in action during trench warfare during World War I. Karl's body was never found.
In 2011, Indonesian police arrested a 29-year-old cannibalistic woman who admitted to killing and eating up to 30 girls and then her husband. She kept the human meat in her refrigerator to eat when she pleased. The woman also confessed to cooking human meat for her friends and relatives at dinner parties held at her house. She blamed her inner desires for killing and eating the people and said she would do it again if she had the chance.
An engaged couple was looking through photo albums as they put together a slideshow of pictures of them growing up to be shown at their wedding. The young lady pulled out a picture of herself at Disney World and set it aside. When her fiancé looked at it, he was shocked. For there in the background was his father, pushing him in a stroller. Not only did they discover they had been at the same place at the same time, but they actually snapped a picture at that exact moment and captured it, only to be discovered years later.
Military ghosts aren't to be trifled with. They'll call you on your shit, quick. Be me, 25 years old, 2007. Just completed OTS, brand new lieutenant at first assignment as EOD flight commander, was EOD tech as an enlisted man, CE degree guaranteed I'd get back into the job. Stationed at Shaw Air Force Base, outside Sumter, South Carolina. Base is relocating non-munitions explosive stores from old facility to new facility a few miles down the road. Carrying 2 crates of Mk-10 blasting caps in light rain to a 2.5-ton truck. Now, a note, Mk-10s are electrically fired, and they're sensitive as fuck. The M-off of a cell phone can trigger them. Static in the air, lightning nearby, about to put crate of caps on the back of an all-metal truck. Here Lieutenant, what the fuck are you doing? Startled, drop crate, turn around, see guy in old khaki uniform, old style Master Sergeant's stripes. Were you about to put those on that truck without grounding yourself? You want to get yourself killed, sir? Stammer out, no sergeant. Guy in khakis says, good, hate to have to clean up the bay. Guy walks off. Ground myself to truck, load, get going. Tell Squadron First Sergeant what happened. He says, oh, you met Charlie. What did you do to fuck up? Apparently Guy was the ghost of MSGT. Charles Dillard, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam vet who retired in 1970. He was known to show up when someone was about to do something really stupid, just to yell before you killed yourself.